All gamers can name bad ideas that the three console makers have made over the years. Sony's PlayStation 3 launch pricing or the bad communication around Xbox One, for example. But I wanted to talk about 3 good ideas that Sony had and they screwed up. Sony announced the PlayStation Vita TV, or the PlayStation TV, towards the end of 2013. At the time, there was a lot of positive buzz. It was a cheap device that you plug into a TV and use it to play Vita, PSP and PS1 games, as well as remote play PS4 games. It was initially a Japan-only product, and as soon as it was announced, there was lots of comments on message boards about wanting it for the rest of the world. For me, the idea of having a cheap device to plug into my TV, play hundreds of different games, as well as remote playing PS4 games, was really attractive. Set-top boxes are everywhere nowadays. If Sony could have marketed the Vita TV as a set-top box that could be used for Netflix and HBO Go, and also you could have access to hundreds of games, I think it could have done really well, especially at just $99. PlayStation has a huge amount of nostalgia associated with the big PS1 games. Communicating that people could play Metal Gear, Gran Turismo and Final Fantasy VII again on the same device as you can watch Netflix and for the same price as an Apple TV would be really appealing to a lot of lapsed gamers. But Sony didn't market it at all. It didn't sell well in Japan, so when it came to the rest of the world, it seemed like Sony had just given up on it. In Europe, it didn't have Netflix either, which meant it was pretty much just a gaming device, but at the same time a lot of Vita games didn't work because they needed a touchscreen. Sony weren't even clear on what games worked and which games didn't. If Sony had tried to market the PS TV and made an effort to get Netflix, YouTube and other streaming services, I think it could have done really well. The PSP Go was announced towards the end of the PSP's life, when the iPhone was blowing up. It was a small version of the PSP but without the UMD drive, so it would only play digital games. Playing only digital games wasn't an issue for me. I'd already built up a bit of a digital library and I would have liked to own a smaller PSP that was easier to take with me on commutes to work. What held me back was the price. It cost $250 or £225 at launch, more than an actual PSP 3000, and PSPs had the advantage of playing UMDs that you could buy cheap and resell. The iPhone had become popular when the PSP Go was announced, so maybe Sony thought that the high price could be justified because it was competing with high-priced smartphones. But in the end, the PSP Go was a complete failure and was discontinued only a year and a half after launch. If Sony could have sold it as a budget device that could play many digital PSP and PS1 games, I think they would have had a lot more success. Sony initially talked about transferring people's physical PSP collections to digital, but that never happened, and many people were not willing to pay so much for a device that could do less than their existing PSPs. Some key games weren't available too, like Final Fantasy Crisis Core and Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. And finally, again, there was no marketing. Maybe Sony knew it wasn't going to succeed after the initial announcement, so decided it wasn't worth advertising. Game streaming has been called the future many times, and PlayStation jumped in when they bought Gaikai. The concept is great. Subscribe and have the option to play hundreds of games in the PlayStation back catalogue on any device. All you need is a controller and you can use PS Now on your smart TV, Vita or PS4. It's a smart idea and positions Sony well for the future if consoles ever die out. The service is still pretty new and Sony may still turn it around, but there have been a few missteps that have impacted the reputation of PS Now. Firstly, there aren't that many games and it's only PS3 games. Sony is adding PS3 games every month and there are some excellent games included on PS Now, but it's got the potential for so much more. For example, having PS1, PS2 and PSP games available as well. Having a bigger catalogue of games would help convince more players to subscribe. Of course, Sony might be starting with PS3 games to confirm PS Now is successful before investing in bringing games from other systems. But they may not get many users without having games from those other systems. Pricing is another issue. I don't have a problem with the subscription price of £13 a month. Given new games cost 3 to 4 times more than DVDs, I expect PS Now to cost more than something like Netflix for a subscription. But the problem is the price of individual games. Some games aren't available even if you subscribe, and they can cost more for a 30-day rental than buying the game on disc. Optically, it hurts PS Now. When people see these prices, then it automatically turns them off. As of right now, PS Now is only available in a few countries. I expect it costs a lot to roll out the service in other countries, and maybe they are testing it right now in a few countries, but the loyal PlayStation gamers that don't get PS Now initially will be automatically soured to the system because they weren't in the first wave of the rollout. There's also the problem again of marketing. The idea is solid, but if people don't know about it, it will never succeed. Non-PS4 owners need to know they can subscribe and play great games like The Last of Us and Uncharted on their TVs. I've never seen information on PS Now outside the PlayStation blog and dedicated gaming sites. If people don't know about it, they won't subscribe to it. The main themes in all this is price, advertising, and actually backing their products. It seems to me that if a product is not instantly successful for Sony, they drop support really quickly. This kind of makes me worried about PSVR. If it's not successful straight away, would Sony just stop supporting it? I hope not, but it does concern me. Do you agree or disagree with my list? Are there any other good ideas that Sony had that they messed up? Comment below and thanks for watching.